does he bring that Regieleki?
Well, let's find out. Top 16 in the Pokemon World Championships is about to begin as we see the leads from either side. Both Shadow Rider Calyrex have hit the field, but James has decided to support that with the Rillaboom and Victor with the Smeargle.
So battle of the fake outs obviously here immediately. I think Rillaboom is a tough bring, but it makes sense, especially into Victor's lead. Now, you have to utilize Rillaboom well because it's so easy to potentially just switch out, for example. And like, you know, there's Incineroar in the back. You can see Victor considering just going for Terra, Nasty Plot plus Fake Out here. This is one of the advantages of using Smeargle. You're going to be max speed. You can outspeed the opposing Rillabooms and prevent them from getting a move off. The nice thing about Rillaboom is you will be able to pressure with a Grassy Glide afterwards, right? And so you do have that priority. But then with Dark Terra, can James actually handle this Calyrex after it gets to +2?
James could use this opportunity to switch out his own Shadow Rider Calyrex and maybe bring in something like the Incineroar and get the Roar off, but you would have to take that Astral Barrage first. And as we see the Terrestrialization committed, we know that's going to be going onto the Shadow Rider Calyrex to give it that Dark Terra and that really great defensive typing.
Yeah, Dark Terra, both players have on their Calyrex, and it's just so good because it gives you that immunity to Psychic.
Ooh.
And both players are going to commit the Terra here, with Victor's Terraing first. So one of the things to pay attention to is who has the faster Shadow Rider in this matchup.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think that was James's actually on the other side.
Okay.
That did Terrestrialize first. But it's hard to tell, right? Because we do have that mirrored on either side. But the Fake Out is also going to be faster for Victor. So Rillaboom is not going to be able to get a chance to move this turn. James has decided instead of going for the Astral Barrage, you're able to use the Psychicking to the Smeargle, already bringing it down to its Focus Sash. That is going to be the only move that James has on his Shadow Rider Calyrex that will be able to do damage. But Victor gets this Nasty Plot off for free.
So you do get the boost up here, and now you're threatened by Grassy Glide just knocking out the Smeargle. That being said, you got to +2. The opposing Calyrex isn't going to do a ton of damage. Smeargle actually does get a speed boost. You can see James reacting because that means if you don't Grassy Glide that slot, it will be able to just get a Spore off, right? And so you can see Victor, a lot of interesting things here. First of all, no Zamazenta in the back. Victor's also saying, well, I think you have to respect the Spore possibility, so why don't I take advantage of this and switch in the Incineroar?
And it's tough too because how is James actually going to be able to damage this Calyrex? We already saw the Psychic. You're not able to use that since the Dark Terra Calyrex would be immune. And so now as the Incineroar comes in, it's also kind of nice because you're getting an Intimidate drop onto this Rillaboom while also being able to take a Grassy Glide better.
Absolutely. Calyrex actually just opting for a Protect here. Doesn't want to take any damage and try to avoid that potential Spore. And so this is James's other response. He's saying, you know what? I can get around the Spore if I just Protect and maybe launch a Wood Hammer into your Shadow Rider. But let's see how much this does. +2 Life Orb. Oh, fall short of the knockout. That Assault Vest being a huge item.
It does, but and the Rillaboom actually goes for the U-turn. I was going to say, if it does go for the Wood Hammer, likely would knock itself out to that recoil, but instead decides to go for the pivot, and now we'll get a chance to see what else James has brought it back for this first game. Looks like it's going to be the Regieleki. What a cool Pokemon to bring in.
Yeah, it's cool, but where do you go from here? You just protected your Calyrex, so Incineroar pivoted out. That was a great switch by Victor, playing one step ahead and even conserving Smeargle. So now you have Fake Out Astral Barrage really freely, right? And so I think the question for Victor is, do you want to make any really crazy predictions? You could also Fake Out until a Regieleki slot, but it just feels very, very safe to, of course, target Calyrex. And a +2 Astral Barrage with that Fake Out will definitely put it in KO range of another Astral Barrage. And so just opting for the safe Fake Out option here, Calyrex realizes, I do not want to take damage. I'm going to pivot back out.
But it's really tough because since the Rillaboom is going to be coming back in and it's at such low HP, James is giving up yet another boost to this Shadow Rider Calyrex. It's going to be +3 at the end of this turn. If the Incineroar hadn't knocked it out to that
so
Fake
close,
Out, but it is close. Victor still gets away with it. +3 Shadow Rider Calyrex is going to run away with this game.
Yeah, I think the upside for James right now is that at least your Regieleki is Focus Sashed, and the Dark Terra should save Calyrex, I think, from getting one-shot by the Astral Barrage, but it is looking really, really scary. I think the advantage, though, that James has is that you do have the fast Calyrex and you have Regieleki, so this next turn, you do pressure with a lot of damage, right? But Incineroar's looking pretty decent. I think Koraidon actually maybe makes the most sense to come out now for James, and then you can pressure with something like Electro Web plus an immediate attack from the Koraidon, try to get a knockout. If you are Victor, you could potentially protect your Calyrex Shadow Rider then and either, go for a switch with the Incineroar or, even go for a parting shot in this position. Yeah, exactly as he's opting to do. With the idea that even if you lose your Incineroar, you at least get a free switch in afterwards.
Yeah, either way. You still have that Smeargle in the back as well, so that is something that you can also use as a sacrificial piece. But the fact that it does have the fake out, really nice thing to have as one of those free switches, so you can guarantee that you're going to be able to get damage off with this Calyrex. So it makes a lot of sense here. Protect the Shadow Rider Calyrex on your side if you're Victor, and also go for some type of pivot with the Incineroar and just hope for the best. We'll see the protect first and how James decides to respond to that now.
I think James is exerting a ton of offense right now, so this is a little bit scary for Victor because, like, Reggieleki's Electro Webs, oh, it's gonna miss the Incineroar. Not really super relevant from a damage standpoint. Koraidon does Collision Course here, and so this turn works out really, really nicely for Victor. I was saying it's a little bit scary because we're getting to this point where, like, you can just Electro Web plus get a big attack off, and that Calyrex, like, baiting out that Terra early was really nice. That's part of this idea of Calyrex plus Koraidon as a duo. So many opposing Calyrexes are Dark Terras. If you get that Dark Terra out, well, you just threaten with super effective damage. And so Smeargle right now can come in for free. There is the ability, of course, to now go for a fake out. If you are James, though, you could theoretically just protect both of your Pokemon and then afterwards go for an Electro Web plus a Collision Course. Well, however, the Smeargle has the Wide Guard. Okay, no speed boost there.
I was like, ooh, but defense. But yeah, it is tough. I mean, Smeargle has just so many options, and I think James still needs to get a couple of turns right in order to really take advantage of that offensive pressure that he has on the field.
The thing I think this turn is probably not going to be a huge turn. The next turn is what I'm really thinking ahead towards, because let's say you just go fake out Astral this turn. The next turn then becomes this mind game of, oh, do I Wide Guard because you're going to Electro Web, or do I just go for a Follow Me saying you're not going to Wide Guard, right? And so I think, yeah, I'm already thinking one turn ahead. I think this turn, because there's fake out pressure, if you are James, you definitely do not want your Koraidon going down. Makes probably the most sense to just protect both.
So we'll see the Reggieleki go ahead and follow with that protect, and the Koraidon following suit. So Victor is going to get denied this fake out plus Astral Barrage combo, but here's where you were bringing it up. This is the turn we're waiting for.
This is the turn, in my opinion, of this game. I think whoever comes out of this turn with the advantage will very likely run away with the game. So let's see. It's going to be intense, and this is the mind game that you have with the Smeargle. So you obviously have Wide Guard. If you go for that Wide Guard, Electro Web then does not work onto either. Astral Barrage just picks up the knockout onto Koraidon, and the Shadow Rider here, of course, can just run away with it. Going to be an attack boost, defense drop, so neither of those Moody boosts relevant. So yeah, and then if you expect, like, it could, of course, not be the Wide Guard then, right? It could be a Follow Me. Like, if you think it's going to be Wide Guard, you can just go for a Thunderbolt instead, and maybe, like, switch out your Koraidon, for example. And so, yeah, I think, like, Victor here, yeah, he's thinking about, Wide Guard's safe, right? And so, yep, Koraidon is going to pivot, recognizing, okay, I just can't go for the Electro Web, otherwise I'm going to fall short. But, I mean, this should give Victor a huge advantage.
I think so, especially because it's going to have to be the Shadow Rider Calyrex that comes in to take its place. And they're still going to be taking a ton of damage despite that Dark Terra. Wide Guard comes out for the Smeargle, but if this Reggieleki decided to follow up with that Electro Web, it is going to be denied. Reggieleki instead goes for the Thunderbolt, not falling victim to that trap, and gets the knockout onto the Smeargle. But here's where things really start to continue to turn positive here for Victor. You've got the free switch now into that Incineroar, and, like, you come in and just fake out something and it goes down.
Yeah, I cannot stress how important it was that Victor conserved the Smeargle. I think it was actually probably always safe for him to Wide Guard there because the Calyrex was already so boosted, so you do knock out the Koraidon, and Shadow Rider presumably is faster. If your Shadow Rider is slower, then that becomes really scary, but basically, yeah, it's like, what do you do now, right? Now, if Raging Bolt hits the field, there is the pressure with the Thunderclap, and this was kind of my fundamental problem with Reggieleki. I think it's just so hard to execute. You need to actually get an Electro Web off with it. If you don't, I think it's actually just useless, and with double Wide Guard pressure from Victor, such a big deal. But if he had stayed in with that Smeargle, and it got knocked out by U-turn, this would be a completely different match because the Electro Web from Reggieleki would have been able to actually get that speed drop. But now it's like, okay, well, you can get a speed drop, but how are you even dealing damage to the Shadow Rider? And then you can just Thunderclap everything.
Yeah, and while the Thunderclap is going to fail because it was targeting into the Reggieleki, this Raging Bolt is still going to be able to take this Astral Barrage pretty comfortably. And that's all the Shadow Rider Calyrex on James's end is going to be able to do, because there's going to be an opposing Astral Barrage incoming, and that will get a knockout onto the Calyrex. And now Victor's Shadow Rider Calyrex +4 special attack.
Yeah, and the Koraidon just comes back out, but now you can just Thunderclap into the Shadow Rider and knock out the Koraidon, and so this is looking really, really tough, I think. And yeah, it's just a huge testament to the support that Smeargle provided in this game, right? Having the ability to go for that Wide Guard makes Reggieleki, I think, relatively useless. And you're calling this out in the pregame, right? There's 2 wide guard users to deal with. Regieleki wants to click that Electro Web, but are you ever actually going to be able to accomplish that if Victor has any wide guard user out? But I think the key turn that I want to dial back into was that turn with the U-turn, right? And Smeargle actually switching out. It got that boost, so I think James definitely got really scared and had to respect that slot, but now it's just Thunderclap and Regieleki feints.
And this poor Koraidon is going to be next to follow suit after we see this final Astral Barrage of this game number 1. So congratulations to Victor Medina, up 1-0 in this best of 3. James in these next 2 games will have to bring it back, but when he takes a look at those adjustments and think once again about the things you've already called out, does this Regieleki just stay home?
I just think it's so hard to execute well, right? Like, in my opinion, if you are bringing up Regieleki, the only thing that it has to accomplish is get that Electro Web speed drop. If you don't do that, then I just don't think it's really accomplishing much. James maybe feels pressure to do it because he's like, otherwise I can't really deal with your Shadow Rider really well, but it's just really difficult, right? And Victor, like, smartly saving that Smeargle, I cannot stress enough how big that was for him.
But how much does James get a chance to take away the fact that he knows his Shadow Rider Calyrex is faster? I think that's also a key piece of information we were highlighting before we got into the match. Is that something that actually changes your mind at all about whether or not you bring the Regieleki?
It's tough, I think, because even though it's faster with the Dark Terra on Victor's end, it's like the opposing Shadow Rider actually doesn't really become that much of a threat. So it's like, then for James's end, the one way you really take advantage of that Dark Terra is going to be the Koraidon. But then as we saw, the Koraidon's slower than the Shadow Rider, right? And so it's really, really tough. I think if you're James, you might be thinking, okay, well, you just revealed Smeargle plus Shadow Rider as your lead. And so what are the possible counters I can have for that from the get-go? Part of it is maybe just like double protecting and then damaging it. Although what's scary is like Victor so much frequently loves going for this Dark Terra nasty plot play, and so you also have to respect that possibility, right? Because like that game felt like Victor was just clicking Astral Barrage every turn and James just had no response.
Then maybe you bring the Incineroar with Roar.
Yeah,
you just lead it right away.
I don't hate that. I think that's certainly one option, but it looks like James is content running it back with Rillaboom Calyrex.
Maybe you have adjusted something in the back though, but it's going to be Victor that actually makes that small adjustment. You've got this Shadow Rider Calyrex. It's going to be next to the Incineroar this time around.
Yeah, so Incineroar here, of course, will get that initial Intimidate onto Rillaboom, and that's big because one of the ways that James could try to deal with this Shadow Rider is, you know, you protect your Shadow Rider, you get a Wood Hammer into Calyrex, that does a lot of damage, then you pressure with Grassy Glide afterwards. Intimidate goes a really long way though, so I like this because I think Victor also recognizes, like, wait, hold on, my Smeargle is actually really, really good in this matchup, and so I'd rather actually conserve it a little bit more until the end, right? He is going for that Dark Terra on Calyrex though, so James theoretically could go for Fake Out onto Victor's Calyrex, Terra his Calyrex, and then maybe go for something like a Nasty Plot.
Nah, it's so tough. I mean, when you think about like the Rillaboom as well as the Incineroar matchup, are you also feeling pretty confident about the speed interactions there as well? And does that maybe that helps inform you about whether or not you could feel comfortable going for that fake out play? But for now, it is going to be the Terastallizations.
Does James call it and go for a fake out onto the Shadow Rider slot? It seems risky, but it actually makes a lot of sense because you are staring down Astral Barrage pressure as well. Once again, we're going to see both players Terra their Calyrex. It just makes so much sense in this matchup. It's like if you don't, then you risk losing the game literally immediately on turn 1 to an Astral Barrage or a knockoff. And so this is a relatively safe Terra, and there's a reason why everyone is running Dark Terra on Calyrex right now.
Yeah.
Ooh, no fake out, okay.
Okay, and James is going to be the one that actually goes for that nasty plot as well. And so we'll see those nasty plots mirrored, and this is about to be turbo mode game 2, Aaron.
Yeah, I would give this advantage to James. Gets the U-turn off as well. That's super effective damage. This is so much better for him. Now you can just go out into Koraidon, and you've gotten the +2 boost on your Shadow Rider. You're faster. You threaten with just Collision Course plus Astral Barrage, and so it's actually going to be the Regieleki here, which I'm a little bit surprised to see over Koraidon, but it's going to be knockoff to come out here.
It is going to knock off the Life Orb that James's Calyrex is holding, and the critical hit certainly doesn't help either. It's going to basically even the score for the amount of damage that these Calyrexes have taken from each other.
Yeah, I think the upside for Victor here is you can just protect, and your Incineroar should survive a turn here. Like, I don't think +2 Astral Barrage plus Thunderbolt even knocks out the Incineroar, so you can see Victor hovering that so much, and he's like, okay, now I can at least switch into the Smeargle. I think you could Parting Shot here instead. This is a little bit scary, but I think theoretically it should always be Astral Barrage coming out here instead of a Psychic, so then the idea is Smeargle at least gets to come in, even if it gets brought down to Focus Sash, you have Fake Out active the next turn.
But is this Smeargle actually going to get knocked out? Like, let's say James calls it. You go
That would be crazy. If you Psychic into that slot, then, like, kudos to you. I think this is, yeah, that would be nuts. That would be absolutely nuts.
Okay, well, let's find out, right? We saw the Protect first, and the Regieleki does go for the Thunderbolt into the Shadow Rider Calyrex. So, okay, we're safe from that turn, but I just saw the vision. And if James had gone for it, it's definitely a wild turn that puts him in such a favorable position. Right now, pretty even. James and Victor still with a pretty healthy HP total between everything, and the Smeargle actually gets a special defense boost.
Yeah, one nuance, by the way, as you called out, the knockoff onto Calyrex is a big deal because it removes the life orb. So I was thinking, okay, you should switch in Koraidon, but James recognizes, well, if I bring in Koraidon and then you get the knockoff onto my Calyrex, I don't think +2 Astral Barrage actually knocks out Victor's Calyrex. And so that's actually the reason why he brought out that Regieleki first. But this last turn ends up being perfect for Victor. You know, we were thinking, oh, does Smeargle at least get brought down a Sash? Doesn't even get KO'd, but the answer is neither. It gets to come in for free with full HP. So you are pressuring with Fake Out plus Astral Barrage. Instead, it's going to be that Wide Guard, though. Okay.
Oh, man.
I mean, that's really safe, actually, because now the opposing Calyrex can't do anything.
It just has to be a Thunderbolt from this Regieleki that does bring it down quite low, but with the Psychic from James's Shadow Rider Calyrex, you bring that Smeargle down to its Focus Sash. But it's the return damage from the Shadow Rider Calyrex on Victor's side that's going to make such a big difference on this turn. Both Pokemon on the receiving end. Regieleki gets brought down to the Sash, and Calyrex so low.
This was a huge turn. So Victor ends up actually not going for, it ends up going for that Wide Guard, and James is not getting baited by it. So I was saying, okay, Calyrex can't do anything into the Calyrex, but it still can Psychic into Smeargle. You see Victor reacting because he knew, oh my goodness, I could have just actually clicked Spore that turn. If I clicked Spore, I might just win the game from that position. But now he's taking a lot of damage on a both. This is so close right now, but you know, James does have the major speed advantage in the current moment. That being said, Victor's done a lot of damage, and you are getting to a point where you can start thunderclapping. However, you still have to deal with that Koraidon in the back for James.
And it's tough because I think even though you bring in the Incineroar here, you have to pick and choose what you're going to actually fake out. This Shadow Rider Calyrex is still very low, and once this Incineroar comes in, you have two targets in front of you that are naturally faster than your own Calyrex.
Absolutely. This is scary for Calyrex, and this is where having the slower Calyrex really can be detrimental. So James deciding, I'm just going to also copy what you did and just go for Astral Barrages. And so Thunderbolt comes out, and Regieleki is actually doing really meaningful damage there with that attack.
Yeah, it's looking quite good, and that's another reason why Regieleki was looked at in the Sword and Shield era as one of these big powerhouse Pokemon. Good for speed as well as that special attack damage output, even if it was nerfed just a little bit here in the Scarlet and Violet era. And now both of these Pokemon relatively low here for Victor. There's still a fourth Pokemon in the back that he can utilize, but this is so risky.
Whoa, okay. Going for the switch into Smeargle, going for a Fake Out here. I mean, from James's end, I think you could probably just double protect, but basically the theory here is if you double protect, I've gotten Smeargle out, I can Wide Guard, and then you cannot hit the Incineroar essentially. Neither Pokemon actually protect, and so Victor actually does get a knockout here.
The knockout onto the Regieleki is nice too, because you know the Smeargle then, it probably is coming in scot-free. And this Astral Barrage will hit the Incineroar, but you've got the Smeargle, which probably you aren't going to be Psychicking into a Dark Terra Shadow Rider Calyrex.
Yep.
So now the Incineroar gets knocked out. I think this is exactly what Victor wanted. The Smeargle next to your own Shadow Rider Calyrex or that Raging Bolt that can provide Fake Out support.
Yeah, it's going to be close. I think I definitely give the advantage to James right now in this game. I think he's handled the offense a lot better, and having this fast Shadow Rider is huge. Crucially, no Moody speed drop or speed increase there on the Smeargle. That obviously is always really scary. Rillaboom is able to come out now, though, so you do pressure with something just like a Fake Out and a Psychic, and then things get really scary because James has now managed his Rillaboom really nicely this game as well, right? And so you, of course, have that Assault Vest. You pressure with Grassy Glide onto the Shadow Rider, and like Thunderclap is nice, but how are you doing enough damage into the Raging Bolt, right? So right now we're seeing, yeah, ooh, Fake Out Dragon Pulse. Okay, double up into the Rillaboom, which makes sense. It makes sense.
Yeah, it does, because maybe you're expecting that this Shadow Rider Calyrex is going to protect itself.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
oh, but it doesn't protect!
No way! Let's see how James is able to capitalize on this. It just goes for another Nasty Block.
Yeah, expecting
so
maybe a Thunderclap. Exactly,
yeah.
Exactly. Oh, and you know, I think Victor's recognizing dealing damage in a Rillaboom is going to be really hard. I actually need to use Raging Bolt as effectively as possible because my Shadow Rider won't actually be able to get an attack off, and so I think the turn works out well for both players. Now you are still pressuring that Thunderclap onto the Calyrex. Calyrex, of course, could protect, could even go for another nasty plot. But oh my goodness.
I mean, it's actually kind of interesting now because we've seen this Smeargle actually get, I think, +4 defense from these Moody boosts. Does the Grassy Glide actually knock it out?
I would expect it to, but if the answer is no, that would be nuts. Like, that would actually be nuts.
But yeah, like Thunderclap into the Shadow Rider Calyrex feels safe because, well, okay, not anymore because of the Protect, but it still feels relatively safe because you would think that it would be the Psychic that goes into something like that Smeargle to try to knock it out. But the Rillaboom goes for the Grassy Glide, and it does get the knockout. Aaron, I don't know. We've seen some wild things this tournament.
If Smeargle survived that Grassy Glide, I'm just walking out of here. It's like, you can't get Spore and be bulky enough to take, like, that, fortunately, the good thing with Smeargle, I say as a non-Smeargle player, is like, it's, stats are just relatively frail. But that would have been nuts. I think, that being said, Victor maybe doesn't mind the switch in here. It's tough because I feel like you kind of need to stall out the terrain. Like, your goal, ideally, is to stall out terrain so that you don't fall to just a Grassy Glide, right? And so James's Rillaboom actually ends up being really crucial here. I think it's not the easiest Pokemon to execute in this matchup either, but it makes a lot of sense into the Assault Vest, or with the Assault Vest, and with the Incineroar being eliminated earlier on, Rillaboom becomes so much more valuable.
I was going to wonder, though, whether or not James is actually going to go for a Nasty Plot again to try to bypass this Thunderclap, because you know that this Shadow Rider is such a big deal for Victor to get rid of, and that's exactly what happens. We're going to see that Thunderclap fail, which means that James is going to be able to have this fully boosted up Shadow Rider Calyrex for the endgame. It is faster than both of these Pokemon on Victor's side, and now maybe, though, can Victor get through this grassy terrain and actually bring himself back in that way? Yeah, that's multiple opportunities that have been able to potentially go for a Dragon Pulse or a Thunderbolt into a Calyrex slot. So I'm sure Victor's feeling it. He's obviously feeling the pressure a little bit. He's like, okay, well, at least I know if I click Thunderclap, you will never get an attack off. But James is like, that's fine. I'll just deal with everything else. Right, well, protect for James, and a double protect here for Victor. Okay. That's huge. No more Grassy Glide to KO this Shadow Rider Calyrex. And while Victor is still going to be stuck, having done no damage in these past couple of turns, this is critical for him. Yeah, absolutely needed to double to stay in the game. So everyone heals back a little bit more. And I'm also wondering, like, if there's any chance Calyrex is bulky enough where it would even be able to survive a Grassy Glide, because terrain is still up. And so you can see, oh, Victor's thinking of going for Nasty Plot. You know, it's the last turn of terrain, so it's like, do you want to go for a triple protect? Or are you like, you know what, I feel back enough where Grassy Glide doesn't KO me. Thunderclap to come out, it doesn't get the knockout. That's such a big deal, because James is able to use this turn to fire on all cylinders. It's going to be Astral Barrage into both and a double KO. James is back in this 1-1 in our first Top Cup match here at the World Championships, and that top 8 spot on the line. Oh my goodness, that one so close. You know, Raging Bull did have some opportunities to go for the Dragon Pulse, target that Calyrex Shadow Rider, but Victor was like, well, you could just Astral Barrage at any point. I think James played through that massively, where he did not get baited by the wide guard turn. The main turn I would point to in this game was when you did have Smeargle out next to the Calyrex, right? And it opted to go for wide guard, and there were no spread moves from the opposing side. You put something to sleep there, like the Shadow Rider, I think it's a very, very different game. But that, to me, feels like the absolute critical turn. I believe this is actually the turn that we were just talking about. But I like James's decision. He's like, look, I know that my Shadow Rider is faster, and I actually know that my Rillaboom is also a really strong Pokemon in this matchup. And just surviving with the sliver of HP is a really big deal. From Victor's end, like, having some priority early on would be nice. So I actually consider if he would ever bring his Rillaboom, right? Because look how low Shadow Rider and Alecki were in that last game. Like, I think that's one option. Zamazenta hasn't come out, and I mean, it is nice with that wide guard, but I think you might be scared of the +2 like Life Orb Psychic from the opposing side. Yeah. And so I actually could see Victor switching to either Rillaboom or Zamazenta here. That would be a nice adjustment, but I also feel like both of these trainers must have had a lot of experience playing against this archetype, especially if you're coming in as a player that has really watched the European scene develop. You know, it's Zamazenta, Shadow Rider Calyrex, Smeargle. Yeah. You know you're going to be playing against that. So I feel like this is a really great expression of skill here from James. I especially like the adjustment where you have the Regieleki actually go for more damage rather than the Electro Webs. Now you call that wide guard turn, but I was just really impressed overall with the Thunderbolt damage that this Regieleki was doing. It was no joke, yeah. I mean, did nearly 50% to Incineroar. I think for Victor, you could
play turn 1 differently. I actually think the leads were not that bad for him, but turn 1 just did. He was, I think, hoping to just like catch Calyrex off guard and say, you know what, I'm just gonna get a knockoff into you. But yeah, I think like you could consider, either player could consider fake outing the other Calyrex, but it's a return to Smeargle, which I think also makes a lot of sense. You got the fast fake out here, and it gives you the protection against the opposing Calyrex immediately.
These are the same lanes we saw in game number 1, and Victor was able to find the edge to carve out that first game victory. But now as we enter into the third game, it all comes down to this. Top 8 on the line here for James and Victor, and we'll see what happens on this first turn. We've seen the run back of these Dark Terrasalizations on the Shadow Rider Calyrex in both of these games so far.
The hard switch immediately, so part of the beauty of the double, triple fake outs is like sometimes you beta protect. If you protect and then you switch in your fake out user immediately in the back, then you could just fake out what just protected the previous turn. But turn 1 already very, very spicy.
Yeah, you got this Incineroar in, as we were talking about in that second game. That Intimidate still plays a huge role again versus this Rillaboom. Didn't see it go for the Woodhammer, but there was an opportunity to do that on the last game. So imagine if you do that this time around.
Oh,
it is just the Grassy Glide, though.
Is it Psychic into that slot as well?
Wow.
Oh, what a turn by Victor!
Oh my gosh!
Oh, that's
the Incineroar coming in was so big, yeah!
Oh my goodness, he gets away with so much in this turn. You don't even get the boost if you're James. Now your Calyrex is boosted. You have Fake Out plus Astral Barrage available to you. Oh, it's a phenomenal turn by Victor, and it's so scary to fall behind like this in one turn because now Calyrex just has so much offense.
And the fact that you have, the +2, you also would put James into a position where he didn't actually terrestrialize on that last turn.
Yeah.
You do save the Terra for something else if you choose to, but right now, James knows he's under threat. He has to get that Shadow Rider Calyrex out of there. Even though he's faster, he doesn't have a great way to actually deal damage to either of these Pokemon. So Victor knows, you are going to remove this Calyrex. I'm free and clear to go after this Rillaboom. Fake out, Astral Barrage, Regieleki breaks the sash, and Rillaboom just faints. That's it, one Pokemon down already for James in this first game.
This is looking so difficult to come back, and that fake out damage, I think, having a little bit of chip is often enough to get the Rillaboom into knockout range, but Regieleki at least survives the attack. Now you can get a free switch into, say, that Koraidon and then pressure with Electro Web plus Collision Course, for example. I think if you're Victor and the Koraidon comes out, you could just protect, go for a parting shot with Incineroar, bring out your Smeargle, and then if Smeargle has Follow Me, with it still at full HP, you can read it. Like, you don't care about eating up an Electro Web because then you just get the Astral Barrage off. So it's going to take a huge, incredible comeback for James to make it out of this one because I feel like Victor, that turn 1 alone was game winning.
And Victor still has the opportunity to go for Protect here. If you are expecting that Koraidon is going to try to get the knockout onto the Shadow Rider Calyrex, there's a great way for you to try to weave in something different. We see the Raging Bolt is available in the back. That's something that Victor used in that first game for that Raging Bolt to capitalize on the Sun, get its Photosynthesis boost, and preserve that booster energy for later.
And I think this makes so much sense where it's like, okay, I've gotten you trapped, right? If you don't knock out my Raging Bolt right now, next turn, Thunderclap, Astral Barrage, GG, shake my hand, right? And so we'll see if the Raging Bolt can survive the turn, but I think this makes a lot of sense. No need to even risk knocking your Incineroar getting KO'd. The only scary thing here is if Koraidon ends up actually targeting the Bolt and the Bolt faints, but it's going to be Thunderbolt to start, and look at that resistance.
Yeah, the resistance is so good here, but the Flame Charge for the Koraidon! Absolutely, you don't have to worry about the Electro Web anymore, helping you get the speed control. The Koraidon can do it all on its own.
That's absolutely huge because, yeah, with that speed boost, hold on, James found the one play that I think can bring him back into this one. Now, there is still the Dragon Pulse pressure, but Koraidon now, of course, is faster than the Calyrex Shadow Rider. It can just go for a Terra as well. Wow, okay, that is nuts. Like, that, I'm telling you, that's the one play James could have made to keep himself in this one.
We've seen him in games 1 and 2 go for the Dark Terrestrialization on the Shadow Rider Calyrex, but he has preserved it for a perfect moment. Decides to protect, knowing his Electro Volt Switch damage is still going to be a lot to the Shadow Rider Calyrex. You have to bring something else in, and it has to be just that Calyrex. So, wow, I mean, this Koraidon really could take it, but we still have a couple more turns we need to get through.
Yeah, because you just switched in on an Astral Barrage. You can see James shake his head. I'm kind of shocked he did that, quite frankly. I think maybe hoping that, like, oh, like, your Calyrex, you know that you're staring down Koraidon and exerting a lot of offense. You have to switch out your Calyrex, but Victor's, you know what? I'm just going to launch my attacks there. I think James had the opportunity to maybe go for a Fire Terran attack there, but this also could be James saying, I feel like I'm so far behind in this game that I do need to make some crazy plays, back-to-back turns, but it feels like that advantage that he had just built up now is slipping away once again.
The fact that the Koraidon protected you missed such a big opportunity to go after that Shadow Rider Calyrex. And now James is down to his final 2 Pokemon with this Game 3 as the decider for who moves on to the top 8 at the World Championships. James got top 4 and the other double restricted formats that we've seen so far in the video game. And looks like he might be going down here.
It's so close. Like, it feels like Victor should have the advantage. In my head, I'm thinking if you're Victor, you can protect your Calyrex and attack with the Raging Bolt. What you would ideally want is for Smeargle to hit the field, right? Because then with Smeargle, you can just go for the Follow Me and then Astral Barrage, and I think that should be game. And so if you're James, you might actually want to be a little bit wary of that. Victor's actually just going to opt for a double protect, it looks like. We finally see that Terra, but you can't help but wonder if this should have come out 1 turn late sooner.
Yeah, it's going to be Regieleki though.
Okay.
All right, so Terra Electric, Regieleki. That Terra Electric going to be very good to help boost up all of those electric type attacks that it has. But that means that this Koraidon is going to be vulnerable. You cannot get rid of your dragon type weakness anymore. James, can he get enough done with this Koraidon? And especially with the Regieleki having this extra damage, but I can't get it through this turn.
Yeah, it's going to be the Collision Course coming out and that Thunderbolt as well, giving it the extra damage that it would likely need to knock out the Shadow Rider. But this is now so scary, right? You can Thunderclap into a Regieleki slot or Dragon Pulse, like you said, super effective damage into the Koraidon. I think if you're Victor there, you actually wouldn't have minded Raging Bolt going down, but I think James was saying, well, I don't think your Bolt will go down just from a Collision Course here. But now you're staring down 2 things that exert so much offense. It's going to be Thunderclap potentially into Regieleki. Regieleki then to get around this can of course go for a Protect. But Raging Bolt is looking really good in this endgame with that Smeargle support as well. And you still have Incineroar in the back, and so Regieleki at least goes for a Protect, keeps James in it for a little bit longer, but I just don't see it.
Now this Koraidon is still going to have to get a lot done. At least you bypassed the Raging Bolt's damage, so this Koraidon is free and clear to go for the Collision Course. We see this move a lot so that you don't have the downside of dropping your defenses with something like Close Combat instead. And James is able to get rid of 1 threat on Victor's side. Still 3 more Pokemon to get through though.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing is, since 2 of those are Fake Out users at full HP, so you can bring out Smeargle, Fake Out into the Koraidon, and just Dragon Pulse into a Regieleki, right? You don't care if Regieleki gets an attack off. Koraidon doesn't have spread moves, and then the subsequent turn you can just go for Follow Me and Dragon Pulse. It is the last turn of Sun, so then there will be no more photosynthesis, but I think that's fine, right? And so the Terra Elecki, you know, it's cute to get the knockout, but then not protecting Koraidon was really rough.
Well, don't forget, we still have the booster energy on the Raging Bolt,
yeah,
so the Sun going away,
doesn't even matter.
No problem for this Raging Bolt.
Exactly.
Victor
But yeah,
Medina, wow.
I think it's like James found an awesome turn to get himself back into it, but then just letting Shadow Rider fade. I like, once again, can totally see why he went for it. He felt like he was so far behind in this game, and he was like, I think you're scared now. You're going to switch out. Koraidon's going to go for that Protect, but I think for Victor, it's just very safe. I don't see, yeah, like, you get the double Protect off, at least with Regieleki. Okay.
That's a big turn though still, because that means that Regieleki does not get faked out and faints on this turn. You can now go into the next one knowing that you should be able to get some damage off as long as the Raging Bolt does not go for a Thunderclap to try to knock it out from this range. But oh my, it's tough. You just take a look at this position for James, and how do you claw back in? Sun is gone, and there's the booster energy. You get that boost right back.
Yeah, and I just feel like now without the Sun increased damage for Koraidon, like, this is just so tough, right? Because you can just go for a Follow Me once again. So, you know, James, like, gets the double Protect, but does it even really end up mattering? I think the only thing is if you were to actually click Thunderclap here and James were to, like, able to go for another Protect. You see, okay, yeah, I can just go for the Follow Me and then just Dragon Pulse Koraidon, right? So, in order for James to maybe even stand a chance, you like need to get a double Protect off with the Koraidon. If Koraidon faints, the game is just over. But this is the thing, like, Raging Bolt feels like the second restricted here because it does so much damage. Koraidon's not going to attempt the double, and that should mean Raging Bolt should secure the game.
Smeargle says, look at me, I am the center of attention. Let me take this Collision Course in your stead, Raging Bolt. I got the focus sash. I can hang on for just one more turn while also keeping you safe from this Regieleki as well. So Raging Bolt should be free and clear. We do see the Electro Web actually be able to hit both targets, but as this Raging Bolt is still going to resist that damage, it really feels like it's just a tickle. And as the Raging Bolt now can go for this next attack, is it just going to be a one-hit knockout onto this Koraidon? It's super effective. You've got that special attack boost from the booster energy, and another Pokemon down. Victor Medina knows with just the Regieleki left, he is in the top 8 of the World Championships.
2023 top 8, 2025 top 8. He has been in, I feel like, literally 10 to 15 top cuts. He has not won that major championship that he has been seeking, but this was a statement here in Game 3. That turn 1 alone, lights out, hard reading what James was going to do, and it just gave him such a huge lead. And this is once again why I thought Regieleki was going to be a really difficult Pokemon to execute in the matchup.
Of course, James is still giving it everything that he's got there. The Protect is just to make sure you don't get Fake Out and Dragon Pulsed or just knocked out on this turn, but we're so close to the end here. Victor can taste the next step of the World Championships and maybe can finally get that major win he's been looking for.
Oh my goodness, here's the Thunderbolt coming out. One last attack for James, but we know how this is going to play out, and it damages the Incineroar, but that's okay because Flare Blitz will deliver the finishing blow. And Victor is moving on to top 8.
Wow, what a match between Victor and James. James being able to